Bill McReynolds played Santa at the Ramseys party like 2 nights before JonBenet was murdered. And I think the big thing why people really care about Bill McReynolds is that not only is he connected in some way to this bear, but Bill McReynolds' daughter was kidnapped in 1974. And so you get to asking questions like, hey, you had a daughter that was kidnapped. And the funny thing is, looks like your wife wrote a play about a girl being kidnapped or a girl being assaulted in a basement. What's that about? Bill essentially neglected to tell the Globe the date of this abduction occurred on December 26th of 1974. And so that put McReynolds' girl's kidnapping exactly 22 years to the day before JonBenet's death. Big shout out to our video sponsors here today. Karen Bednar's 4700. What's up? Appreciate you supporting the channel. Trace the Ace. What's up? Supporting the channel. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Big Carrie, not the little one. You know who Carrie is. I don't even have to say it. You know who Trace is. I don't even have to say it. Appreciate you for the love. And last but not least, CME 127. My corporate partner, thank you so much for the contributions. Once again, a round of applause for every one of the video sponsors here today. And you know what we got to do. Group hug. Even the microphone gets a hug. Appreciate you all tremendously for contributing to the channel. And hope you like this next video. Let's do it. Once again, huge shout out to every single individual who sponsored this video or sponsored previous videos. Karen, Carrie, CME, Trace, and additional consideration. If you see them in the chat, say what's up, show them some love, because their contributions to the channel are much appreciated, as well as everyone else. Not to leave anybody out, but appreciate you all for being here watching. The individual that you're looking at, his name is Charles Brennan, and Charlie is long-time 40-year experienced reporter out of Denver, Colorado. And he was with the Denver Post for a while, I think, until the Post went down. And I think he's now at the Daily Camera. But a lot of his work, or his name you'll see on a lot of the work in the JonBenet case. And I bring him up because he was accepted into the International Society of Barristers quarterly, International Society of Barristers, and apparently they have a sort of like a journal that they put forth. And so this one was volume 35, released in April of 2000. So the contents of some of these are, they talked about Charlie Brennan talks about conduct unbecoming inside the JonBenet Ramsey case, the Innocence Project, electronic Pearl Harbor, so on and so forth is what they talk about. And so this is their website, and their mission statement essentially says that membership in the International Society of Barristers is extended to advocates of exceptional talent whose qualities, including integrity, honor, and collegiality, embody the spirit of the true professional. Membership is by invitation only after rigorous screening process involving lawyers and judges to identify trial lawyers who meet its standards. Society nurtures excellence and professionalism in advocacy by its recognition of members' achievements and providing an opportunity for them and their spouses and guests to meet and find renewal of spirit in the company of others who have traveled on a similar road. Its annual convention combines presentations extraordinary in both their quality and diversity, including topics drawn from the arts, politics, science, and other areas of interest to lawyer and non-lawyer alike, with a broad range of social and recreational activities. Barristers have no rank. This is pretty cool. Barristers have no rank or privilege among them and gather annually to renew old friendships and to make new ones. So essentially just like hey man, we're here. I'm not trying to pull rank on anybody. I'm not trying to say that I'm better than you. We're just here to show love and say and recognize Real recognize real in a sense. Like, I know you do great work. I do great work too. It's nice to be in this sort of environment. Iron sharpens iron. The society publishes a quarterly journal of topics covered at the meeting and otherwise of interest to its members. Through the International Society of Barristers Foundation, the society supports the work of other organizations whose endeavors are consistent with the society's support of excellence and advocacy under the adversarial system. So within this volume, Charles Brennan writes Conduct Unbecoming, which essentially is an article about some of the mess that was wrapped up in the JonBenet case. And so I'm not going to read the thing. It's like 14 pages, something like that. Like 14 pages. I'm not going to read the entire thing to you, but I'm just going to kind of give you the high points of what I ran into or what I thought was interesting. And obviously you can, this is online. I didn't have to log into any special library or anything to get this. It's a pretty interesting read. You know, we talk a lot about the Missing Innocence, written by Anne Louise Bardock of Vanity Fair. We talk a lot about that article, and it's a pretty long read for an article. You know, it's one of the longer reads for an article, but it's really interesting. It's really packed with a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, a lot of legwork done by Anne Louise. And this one's pretty good too. If you're a fan of, I think what this individual is saying, what Charles is saying in this article, is that he and Lawrence Schiller, I believe, worked together. And some of you have read this book, worked together on Perfect Murder, Perfect Town. And so they worked together on it. And so essentially, you know, he kind of talks about some of the things about how they wrote the book and reasons that they did or did not come to conclusions about who actually killed JonBenet in the book, things like that, and all his experience and all the mess that he experienced getting on the ground and when this thing first happened, trying to get feedback on what was going on and, you know, who are the players involved and stuff like that. So he kind of talks about that. And here's his opening. The night of Christmas of '96, my daughter and I capped off, and this is the night of Christmas of '96. My daughter and I capped off our celebration in unconventional style. We attended a showing of the movie Mars Attacks, a completely silly, if sometimes brutal tale of an alien invasion that nearly succeeds in toppling man as master of his earthly domain. The pratfalls, the horror, the cheesy dialogue, and the theater of the absurd temperament of the story were all too filling, if not entirely adequate, preparation for the next 3 years of my professional life. For it was the very next evening that I received a call at my home in Boulder from my editor at the Denver Rocky Mountain News. Not Denver Post, I think I said Denver Post, but Denver Rocky Mountain News. Yes, he was at the Rocky Mountain News, where I had labored since 1984. There had been a kidnapping, I was told, but the child was dead and still in her parents' home. Get over to 755 15th Street in Boulder and tell us what you find. Were the orders, and that is how I pulled through the looking glass into the JonBenet Ramsey case. And so I'm going to pull up my notes and kind of just walk through some of the interesting points that I found in this article. I think probably one of the most interesting things that I ran across was the story about the teddy bear. And before I do move forward, I want to just make completely clear what a barrister is. So a barrister is a specialist lawyer primarily known for courtroom advocacy and litigation, often working with solicitors. They are experts in presenting cases, examining witnesses, and making legal arguments before a judge or jury. Barristers typically focus on more complex legal matters and provide expert legal opinions. So in advocacy in the courtroom, they present cases, examine witnesses, and argue legal points before the judge or jury. So that's essentially what they do. But anyways, that is what a barrister is. So as we said, you know, we are looking at this idea that Brennan mentions something about a teddy bear. And when you look in some of the files, and we'll go through sort of the connection of the teddy bear to everything else is what we'll do. But essentially the teddy bear is connected to Bill McReynolds in some way, as you probably know or don't know. But like I said, we're going to talk about it. And so one of the biggest things about the article talks about that Patsy remembers. So they brought up a teddy bear being in the crime scene, and Patsy, and then when they asked John, you know how John and Patsy do. They asked John and Patsy about it, and John and Patsy, it's like, hey, how'd this teddy bear get here? And Patsy reportedly let out an exclamation. Patsy let out an exclamation. The dramatics, you know what I mean? Like, yo, like, why do you have to be so dramatic? I'm just showing you a picture of a teddy bear. So Patsy Ramsey reportedly let out an exclamation upon looking at one picture and noticing on the bed a bear that she didn't recognize. She had never seen it before. She said, "Where did that come from? What did it mean?" Those questions remain unanswered to this day. I disagree with that. If you look at and like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next video when we wrap up or do a more deep, in-depth analysis on Bill McReynolds, because that's all connected to that. So anyways, Patsy, she exclaims, "I don't know where that bear came from," which is kind of par for the course, right? It's par for the course because you ask them about some pretty important points of the case, and they say they don't know anything about anything in their house. You know what I mean? Like, you could find a plate on a counter and John and Patsy didn't put it there. They don't tell you why it has nothing to do with them or why they don't recognize it. They just tell you, "Oh, I don't feed my kids pineapple in a bowl with no spoon. I don't know who would do that." Give a crap. Maybe this is the time that you chose to use a spoon. I mean, it's not a big deal. But now we're getting into, at this point, I'm probably going to do a video on everything that the Ramseys say they don't know. That's been something that I've been thinking about, doing a video on everything that the Ramseys say they don't know, because this is wild. So Patsy doesn't know about this. She says, "I never seen the bear before," which prompts, I believe, let me find it, which prompts the DA to say, "Oh my God, we got to find," because the DA, the prosecution, gets access to this bear. And so, they're trying to do everything that they can to figure out where this bear came from. What's this bear made out of? All that stuff. And, kind of like I think what they did with the high-tech boot, who made it, and things of that nature with the rope, trying to figure out where the rope came from and all such as that, and trying to get back to, where would these things, they're doing, good detective and police work, trying to figure out where it's made. If you look at a lot of crime shows, you're going to see the police go all the way back to some things. They're going to go look at tapes for individuals who bought a shovel from, Walmart and got a receipt and paid for it with what credit card. Okay, where was the credit card? Can we find it on the credit card statement? Just to tie the case together. And, we found the shovel that you bought at Walmart at the crime scene, same make, same model, to shut it down. So from what we see here, the police are doing good police work. This is essentially what Brennan is saying. They're doing good police work. They're going back into, they're going back and looking for everything associated with it. And so essentially, when they ask, Patsy about it, one week later, District Attorney Alex Hunter reported that his office had received 130 emails. They put out a BOLA on it. They've received 130 emails, 160 phone calls, 4 faxes, 20 pieces of mail. Now, doesn't this look similar to what the police were putting out in their reports when they were announcing stuff like this? Hey, we looked at this many suspects. We received this many voicemails. We returned this many voicemails. We followed up on this many leads. This is exactly what the police were doing. And John Ramsey led us to believe that he was unaware. The police weren't doing anything. He was unaware of the reports that the police were doing, unaware of anything going on in the investigation, when what we're finding out is that John Ramsey was actually very knowledgeable about the forensics. He was very knowledgeable. He was just basically picking out pieces that he wanted. Very knowledgeable about the forensics. So it leads me to believe that John was probably knowledgeable about something like this as well. 20 pieces of mail. His website had registered 28,000 hits in the wake of the bear bolo. Further, he had received the information he had been seeking. What that information was, we'd never been told. I did, however, subsequently write a story on why the bear's vitals had been sought, because they were kind of going through looking for the bear and everything. And so they got all the manufacturer information from the bear, and we still don't know the significance of the bear, but the bear had something to do with, it was like a Santa bear. I can say that. It was like a Santa bear, you know, hey, this is a Santa bear, and, you know, Santa bear is, you know, related to Santa Claus. Santa Claus, who would be Santa Claus in this case? You know, Santa Claus would be, oh, you know, I don't really know Santa Claus, any other Santa Clauses except, and this is what Patsy and John did, except Bill McReynolds, you know, and that's how Bill got wrapped up in this nonsense, which moves us to Bill McReynolds. Bill McReynolds played Santa at the Ramseys party like 2 nights before JonBenet was murdered. And I think the big thing why people really care about Bill McReynolds is that not only is he connected in some way to this bear, and we're going to do a deep dive on Bill, like I said, not only is he connected to this bear, but Bill McReynolds' daughter was kidnapped in 1974. And then I think, December 26th of 1974, along with a friend. And from what I understand, they were kidnapped for like a day or two or something like that. The friend was assaulted by the kidnapper. The friend was assaulted by the kidnapper, I believe. But as I understand it, Bill and Janet's daughter, Janet is Bill McReynolds' wife. Bill and Janet's daughter was, you know, untouched, is from what I understand. But still, the fact that his daughter was kidnapped in 1974, December 26th of 1974, kind of ties a little bit of connection to JonBenet on the December 26th date. So if I can go to Bill really quickly, just to kind of get us there. Brennan talks a little bit about Chris Wolf. Chris Wolf's girlfriend had, you know, essentially said, hey, you know, I think my boyfriend did it. You know, he's suspicious. And they went through all of that. He went through all of that in the story. And he goes on to say that still, I learned very recently that Chris had yet another link to the case, one his former girlfriend never mentioned, and one that has never been reported anywhere. And this is just good analysis, man. This is when you look deep enough, this is stuff that you find, just like little tidbits like this. He says, I mentioned that Chris had worked as a journalist. And so Chris was a journalist. And he also mentioned, before I get into this, Brennan was mentioning that prior to, he went to go speak with the girlfriend that was calling in on Chris and saying Chris was, you know, possibly a suspect in this case, and mentioning all the ways in which Chris, you know, had done this. And if you're familiar with Web Sleuths, you probably want to go watch that, where Chris Wolf was, you know, it's a recent episode, I believe, where Chris Wolf was on there and he was kind of talking about, you know, hey, this is where I was that night. And he was kind of giving an explanation and kind of saying, hey, the police did approach me. And this is what I did when they approached me. Not ducking, not dodging, not hiding. It's like some of the most damning evidence that comes against people in these cases, like Fleet White, Chris, Bill McReynolds, these people, they don't back off. They don't run away. They don't try to run and hide. Even though John and Patsy makes it seem like it, these people go straight to the cops and say, what are you looking for me for? What do you want? What have I done? And then they get hit with hey, you know, you possibly killed this little girl. And they're like, what? Take my blood, take my hair, whatever you need. I'll sit down and talk to you. And they do. So I mentioned that Chris had worked as a journalist, is what Charles is saying. Where of all places did he study journalism? University of Colorado. And this is where Bill McReynolds comes in, who of all people was one of the professors there. And I don't know if he studied under Bill, but Bill McReynolds was a professor of journalism at the University of Colorado. And the University of Colorado is kind of central because it's like right down the street from John and Patsy's neighborhood, right? So a lot of people, and we should also note that sort of in this small town of like 96,000 people, I almost want to say it's like a university town. You know what I mean? It's like a college town, because almost the biggest thing there is the obvious thing there is the University of Colorado. You know what I mean? Like, it's right there. So what else would people be doing? You know what I mean? Like, it's like going to Cornell. You know what I mean? Like, or some other college town. There's nothing but Cornell there. Like, I mean, you have doctors' offices and things and businesses, but the main reason that people come here and center everything around is the college students. You know what I mean? So that's essentially where they were. They're kind of in it, to my understanding, they're in this college town. And in fact, I'm told that Chris and Santa Claus became fast friends as teacher and student. Okay, so that was the connection. Chris probably had Bill McReynolds as a teacher. So that friendship continued after Chris's tenure as a student and McReynolds as a professor. I think Bill retired in 92. He says, and let me emphasize, the investigators don't believe JonBenet was killed by Santa Claus, even though our book revealed, and he's talking about Perfect Murder, Perfect Town. Even though our book revealed JonBenet told a playmate's mother, and this would be Megan Kosniak and Barbara Kosniak, Megan being the daughter, Barbara being the mom. Even though, as our book revealed, JonBenet's playmate, shortly before her death, JonBenet said that Santa Claus had promised her a second visit after Christmas. It was to be their little secret, she was told. What did she mean by that? Which Santa Claus was she talking about? Was she just voicing some childish holiday fantasy? We may never know. And so the story on that, just like a little backstory on that, is that essentially Barbara Kosniak, apparently heard this from her daughter, Megan, who heard this from JonBenet. And so Barbara reaches out to the BPD, as the story. Barbara reaches out to the BPD and says, hey, I got this story that my daughter told me about Santa Claus. You need to check up on this. And apparently the BPD wanted nothing to do with it, or what have you, is the story. And so Barbara calls Susan and says, hey, I'm looking to get in touch with the Ramseys so that, the Ramseys investigators can look at this, Santa Claus angle. And obviously, as you always know, Patsy and John are more than happy to jump on something like this. And so they did. And so the big issue, that's one of the issues, in this, Bill is Santa Claus, and you see this sort of Santa Claus or Santa based or Santa themed bear showing up on JonBenet's bed, which is the crime scene, shows up on her bed. And so you get to asking questions like, hey, you had a daughter that was kidnapped. And the funny thing is, looks like your wife wrote a play about a girl being kidnapped or a girl being assaulted in a basement. What's that about? So, obviously, and Charles is working with somebody at this point, but obviously, Charles, is trying to follow up on this case. He's working with another guy who's on a national level, and they're kind of cool. They're friends in this. And so this guy's name is Dan Glick. And so Glick is on the national level and Charlie's on the local level. So they're working together to kind of crack this case and, find leads and stuff like that. But essentially, Dan says, hey, there's this interesting note that Santa neglected to tell the Globe. And I think the Globe, Shapiro, the name Shapiro associated with the Globe, that they were working with a lot, or they had, talked to a lot. But anyways, the Globe, Bill essentially neglected to tell the Globe the date of this abduction occurred on December 26th of 1974. And so that put McReynolds girl's kidnapping exactly 22 years to the day before JonBenet's death. And so this kind of sends Chris and Dan on this kind of like, oh my goodness, kind of deal. It makes sense. That's fine. So obviously you're going to go research it. And so Glick says, hey, do me a favor, go look in some of your research archives and see what you can find about this whole thing. So Charles says, I couldn't get to our archives quickly enough. Under Bill McReynolds' name, I found nothing. Okay. He says, but I saw that we had a thick file on Janet McReynolds. Curious, I pulled out the envelope of yellowing news clips. It turned out that Janet McReynolds, Bill's wife, had been a writer for a local newspaper and also achieved modest success as a playwright. I think she wrote, like, from what I can tell, she wrote like 4 plays. I think one was, she had even won a few awards for her play, Hey Ruby. I think she won like a $7,500 grant or something like that. I was looking on the internet to see if we could find the play manuscript for any of her plays, but I couldn't find anything. She wrote something about John Dillinger. She wrote something about fighting to get to heaven or something like that. I think I'm misremembering, but if you're interested in it, it's something on like doodle.com or something like that. So all you have to do is type in Janet McReynolds Colorado playwright or something like that, and something like doodle.com would come up, and it kind of shows you the 4 plays that she wrote, essentially. And so she achieves modest success. She'd even won a few awards for her play, Hey Ruby, which is the play that's in question. I'm going to go into that a little bit further in the Bill McReynolds video. The play, based on a real event, concerned the 1966 torture and murder. It's actually 1965, I think, of a teenage girl found dead in a basement. And so obviously the hairs on his neck stood up, and he's so surprised. Is this the case that, Bill's wife helped him? Because they were saying that maybe it's like 2 people who helped, but, and why would help be necessary, right? Help for Bill would be necessary because Bill had recently had open heart surgery, probably like, I think 3 or 4 months before the murder of JonBenet. And so Charlie kind of says, privately, I'm told that the police dismissed the McReynolds as suspects based in part on their full cooperation with the police, but more significantly on the fact that Bill McReynolds had undergone multiple bypass heart surgery just a few months before the crime. He would have been too infirm to carry out the crime, they reasoned. And yet it was because of that same infirmity that Janet McReynolds had accompanied her husband to the Ramsey home 2 nights before the murder to assist Santa in his duties at their holiday party. Could she not have been Santa's helper the night of the crime? Now, I'm not saying that she couldn't have helped, obviously, but because this has happened before, we know that in the Elizabeth Smart case, and in other cases that, sometimes wives indulge in their husbands' they indulge in their husbands' fantasies, the vileness of their husband's actions. They indulge in that. Epstein, R. Kelly, kind of deal. So they kind of indulge in that, or spouses, what have you. So it's not like it can't happen. I'm not saying that. It's not like it can't happen, but I think my thing is with the open heart surgery thing. You got to look more into that. So in that order, I was interested in understanding more about the plausibility of Bill McReynolds, because, people might say, oh, you dismissed him or you cleared him based on this open heart surgery thing, based on this, but he could have done it. And so I was like, okay, what's the probability? what's the likelihood that he may have done something like this? And I pulled up this article, and this is from Baylor, and Baylor, it's essentially talking about how soon can you engage in what I might call adult activities, adult intimacy, or intimacy after, sort of this, I think it was like multiple bypass heart surgery, I think he had. And essentially what they're saying from Baylor Medical is that the guidelines recommend that adult activity may be safely resumed 6 to 8 weeks after surgery if the sternum is well healed. This is because movement during adult activity could impart considerable stress on the chest bone and compromise healing. Now, obviously, I'm censoring myself to be YouTube friendly, obviously. Even after this 6 to 8 week time frame, in the early post-operative months, certain positions may still need to be avoided if they cause discomfort at the surgical site. So you still got to monitor it. It's on a case-by-case basis, on an individual-by-individual basis. It is also advisable that any physical activity is reintroduced in a gradual fashion. Any physical activity. That includes adult intimacy. Adult activity is typically equivalent to mild, moderate exercise, i.e. brisk walking, mowing the lawn, or deep house cleaning. The important thing is to listen to your body and keep open communication with your partner about the level of endurance and any pain you may experience. This is important because if Bill is listening to his body and he got this surgery, I think it says a few months before the crime, you know what I mean? So December, a few months before, and we assume, say 3. When I hear few, I think 3. So December, November, October, September. So he got this maybe around September 26th, something like that. So they're telling us to wait probably about 6 to 8 weeks to and then still after that, listen to your body. So if we say 6 to 8 weeks from October 26th, let's just say September, 6 to 8 weeks from September 26th. So he's looking at November 7th, somewhere around November 7th and November 21st, that he should be good to engage in, and he's 67. I think he's like 67 or something like that. So, I'm a little bit older. I can't really be moving like that. You know what I mean? I can't really be, I might have to watch myself a little bit more. I think my dad had that kind of surgery when he was way younger. Man, 40s, maybe 40s, 50s. I'm thinking. No, maybe his 30s, maybe 30s or 40s, something like that. I think maybe in his late 40s, something like that. And my dad hasn't been the same. Now he's still my dad, he's still him, but he can't, or he not that he can't, but he doesn't do certain things like that, if that makes sense. Like he used to go out and play basketball with us all the time. But, after that, he didn't do it as much. He wasn't chasing us around as much because you got to take it easy on your heart. Doctor said, you got to take it easy on your heart. So as we see, Bill is, as Janet is even like more than a month, because the party was on the 23rd, I believe, the party with the Ramseys house, I guess, when Bill was Santa, or even the 25th. But I think it was the 23rd when he was Santa, and Patsy was telling him what to do. Like, hey, read these to the kids. This is the little tidbits about the kids. Even at that point, a month after the recommended time to engage in adult activities, Bill is still needing help from Janet because he's a little bit older, and maybe there are other complications that are involved in this. And so this is why Bill might be cleared, because it's like, man, I'm looking at this dude and clearly I don't think he can do it. So even after that, he's still needing help. So if we can think for a moment, if Janet is assisting Bill, if Janet is assisting Bill 2 days before the crime, right? 2 or 3 days before the crime, if she's assisting Bill, wouldn't Bill need help to get down there? Now, it's speculated that, it was easier for him to go in the room and tell JonBenet, hey, come on, I'm Santa, let's go down and eat some pineapple. So essentially, what we're expected to believe is that Bill and Janet and JonBenet, Bill, went up, snuck in these folks' house. He's 67, having heart surgery, and he's still needing help from his wife. So Bill and Janet pulled up in their car. This 67-year-old man, over 60 couple, Bill and Janet pull up in their car. This is what we've been made to believe. They pulled up. This is what they're saying is possible. Help me. Bill and Janet pulled up in their car in the dead of night. No one noticed. This man getting out of this car, slowly needing help from his wife, slowly walking up to the door and walking through the door. Come on. Because, and I want you to think in the back of your mind, Linda Hoffman, the picture that I showed you of Linda Hoffman. This is kind of like the same scenario. Because we showed Linda Hoffman probably wouldn't even have the arm strength to pull herself through that window. But she would have a key to walk in through the front door. Linda Hoffman, and I think Linda was like in her 50s or 60s, same thing. Why would Linda and Bill ain't in no shape, especially with the health issues. And to be at that age, maybe you know someone, and I'm not saying it's not possible, but who do you know in their 60s? Who do you know that's going out and like, you know what? I want to go commit a crime to this magnitude, to this planned magnitude. Maybe you know someone. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I'm saying right offhand, do I know anyone in their 50s and 60s who are like, you know what? I'm just going to go plan a crime, and do something like this. I mean, maybe O.J. Simpson, that'd be the only one that I knew, but he was going to get his stuff back. He was vindictive about losing his stuff, but he was going to get his stuff back. So there's a clear motive. I gotta go get my stuff. But to be like dabbling in the night, just like, you know what? Can't sleep. You know what? Let's plan a crime like this. And OJ wasn't coming fresh off of, heart surgery. Right? So to say that Bill was like sneaking through windows, you know what I mean? Like that's what we're being led to believe. Bill and Janet came in the house, went upstairs in the house is dark, went upstairs. Burke had just gone back to sleep, is what we're being led to believe. Burke had just gone back to sleep. He snuck up for a little bit, gone back to sleep, comes back down, and Bill and Janet just missed him. And Bill and Janet are apparently jealous. John is telling us that, experts are saying that this is somebody that's jealous of you. So Bill is apparently jealous of John, and but he loves JonBenet. But his jealousy for John is so overwhelming that he would go to any length to hurt JonBenet because he's so jealous of John. John must have done something in 2 years. John and whatever. Anyways, so John must have done something that Bill didn't like. Bill's mad and says, you know what, even though I love JonBenet, I love children, you know, John, because of what you did, now I got to violate you. And so they sneak into the house. There's this frail man coming through the door. Can't really do anything. You know what I mean? His wife is helping him through the door. In the dark, they walk up the stairs. This man with open heart surgery is just walking upstairs. Let me tell you something. And again, not everybody is my dad. But my parents live in a 2-story home. You won't catch my dad hardly ever going upstairs. My dad will go to the bottom of the stairs and that's it. And he'll call out my niece and my nephew, come downstairs, blah, blah. But my dad ain't going up no stairs. Right? Just ain't gonna do it. So Bill is going up this flight of stairs. He's putting himself in a position to be tired and exhausted. He's going to go up there and, you know, knock on JonBenet's door. Hey, John. Now. Remember, we are dealing with a 6-year-old who is knocked out cold. Listen to me. We are dealing with a 6-year-old who was knocked out cold. According to John and Patsy, the 6-year-old is knocked out cold. She wouldn't even get up when John picked her up. Dang near knocked her. According to John, almost hit her head. Almost dropped her. Almost hit her head on the car. Something like that. He said he almost dropped her. That means you struggled to get out the boom, 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 boom. Boom. Can't handle her. You know what I mean? You almost dropped her. Almost couldn't even handle the girl. And she still was asleep. Brought her upstairs. Put her in the bed. Patsy came up and agitated her even further. Start taking her clothes off and putting other clothes on her for her nighttime, for pajamas, and put her back to sleep. And we're talking about a JonBenet where John set her down and JonBenet is knocked out. And John is like, hold on. John is like, babe, I know you sleep. I know you knocked out. I know you not even awake. Because I almost dropped you. And I know you probably ain't gonna hear this, but fee fi fo fum, Gulliver's Travel, Mickey Mouse, Peter Pan. I love you so much. I just got done reading to you. I love you. Mwah. JonBenet was asleep through all of that. Out like a light. And then after that, after John, in a loud voice, coming in and saying, let me read to you. Patsy follows up and rustles her. Take all this off and let me get all this off of you. Doing all of that. Patsy comes up and does that. And JonBenet stays asleep. This is the same JonBenet who is out like a light, who woke up without any issues and came downstairs when Santa Bill walked his tired behind upstairs, huffing and puffing at the help of Janet. Burke ain't hear nothing. John and Patsy ain't hear nothing. They out like a light. They sleeping as hard as JonBenet is sleeping. But somehow, some way, JonBenet was like, you know what? I'm not tired anymore. I'm actually awake. I'm actually wide awake. Just in the nick of time for Bill to knock on the door. Hey, Johnny B, we're ready for you, babe. Uncle Bill is here to give you your surprise. And JonBenet is all of a sudden awake. No longer out like a light. And what we're being led to believe, what's being insinuated, is that she traveled down the stairs with Bill and Janet. And Bill said, you know, I just love you. Let's get you, what's your favorite snack? Let's get you some pineapples. Knowing full well his intent. Janet also knowing full well his intent. They come back downstairs and they sit down for a second and they fellowship with one another. So how's school? Bill is like, so how's school? How's Jacquees? How's life? How's pageant life? Getting along with Burke okay? Getting along with your mom okay? I heard that your mom, she wanted to cut your hair, a couple of years ago because you guys were fighting about whatever and you got a bobby haircut. How was the photo shoot with Judith? How was your play date with Megan Kosniak? How was all of that? How's High Peaks? How's everything going? Teachers treating you great? Cool. All right. Well, you ready for your surprise? Let's get up and go down one more level and see what we got down in the basement. Right. And so Bill traverses down one more flight of stairs with the help of Janet. And JonBenet just runs along. She's quiet because Bill is like, shh, don't say anything. So she goes downstairs. And then somehow, some way, we're being led to believe that Bill went ahead and did his business. And Janet kind of helped him in that process, whatever role she had. I think some sources report that he was miles away, or he said that he was miles away with his family. But Janet apparently helps him. And so they do something in the dead of night, and then something happens that's not supposed to happen. Somehow, some way, Burke's DNA gets involved, and Patsy's DNA gets involved. But Bill, ever clever, is able to wipe his DNA away. Smart enough to do that. Then they go upstairs and Janet or Bill, they write a note, which their handwriting was never listed on anything. But they go and write a note. Their handwriting wasn't associated with anything, even though they gave handwriting samples and blood and hair samples. Wasn't mentioned associated with anything, but they go upstairs and they write this letter to deceive us and distract us. And then they go back downstairs and they make it look like JonBenet was actually bound. Neither Bill nor Janet's DNA were positively identified with anything in the house, right? Even though they had been there at the time of the party on the 23rd, nothing is positively identified on JonBenet. Their DNA is not positively, to my knowledge, positively identified on anything. We're expected to believe that this man who just had open heart surgery he and his wife snuck in the Ramseys' house after the Ramseys left and sat and waited for John and Patsy to get back home, is what we're expected to believe. And so this is kind of the ordeal with Bill and the relationship with JonBenet, and somehow, you know, the teddy bear thing, because Santa and Santa's teddy bear, and maybe that was Bill's calling card. Moving forward with the article, there was another point of interest. They talked a little bit about the grand jury. The grand jury spent 13 months. According to Brennan, there was no indictment returned, but we know that's not true. There was an indictment returned. Alex Hunter just didn't want to tell us about it. But you can clearly see that Brennan is led to believe that no indictment was returned. They spent 13 months working on the case, and essentially we were led to believe that they found nothing, which is also not true. And so Charlie goes into talking about Steve Thomas and his book coming out, stuff like that. It's going to be a interesting read, he thinks. So this is at a point to where Steve Thomas hadn't yet released his book, but it goes on to say that Detective Thomas's departure from the case was accompanied by a 5-page single-spaced letter in which he found a dozen ways to say Hunter's office had betrayed the police and facilitated the denial of justice. Steve Thomas, you know, and that's what we said in the Vanity Fair article, Missing Innocence, that Steve Thomas, you know, Steve Thomas said it in his letter. You know, this is bull crap. Y'all got some stuff going on. No matter what we do, you guys won't do anything. You guys won't clear anything. We're asking for phone records. We're asking for credit card records. You won't give us that. And you're telling us to do our job, right? And even in this article, Brennan kind of says, you know, we wrote this book, you know, Lawrence and I, we wrote this book without the help of the Ramseys. Yeah. Welcome to the club. So did the police try to figure out this case without the help of the Ramseys. The police said the same thing in their police report. That's two people saying the same thing. We're trying to solve this case without the help of the Ramseys. So we're just going to move forward and try to figure it out. And that's what everybody's doing. Having to figure out the case without the help of the Ramseys and the consistent involvement of the Ramseys. Yet, guess what? You will see, without helping, you will see John and Patsy and Burke, whoever, jump on television, especially John. Really, John. Let me just reduce that down to John. Let me revise my statement and say you will see John Ramsey jump on the television and tell us that the police aren't doing anything. The police aren't trying to help. The police aren't telling them anything, blah, 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 this and that. When you have the police, you have news sources saying, I mean, this dude ain't going to give us no help, so we're going to have to do what we have to do. Right. And so he says, Steve Thomas says, you know, the police betrayed us. His outburst, or I'm sorry, the DA betrayed us. His outburst, talking about Steve Thomas's outburst brought the infighting into such a sharp focus that the governor of Colorado sat down with Alex Hunter and 4 other metro area district attorneys who'd been advising Hunter since early in the case. Governor Roy Romer demanded to hear privately their responses to the laundry list of improprieties alleged by Detective Thomas. As a result of that meeting, Hunter remained in control of the case, but 2 of his prosecutors were pulled off the case, and Hunter was told both that he'd be taking on 2 new deputies on loan from other jurisdictions in the Denver area, and that he'd need to hire another outside prosecutor with expertise in grand jury procedure, because as Governor Romer himself announced that day to the public, the case was going to grand jury. And so essentially, from what we know is that Detective Thomas threw something out there, Fleet and Priscilla White threw something out there, and then finally Judith Phillips threw something out there. They all threw letters out there that said, hey, we need a special prosecutor. And I think at this point, I don't know. I think maybe Michael Caine was already there, or at this point Caine came in. I'm not sure. No, that's a lie. Caine was already there. But anyways, I think Caine was already there. But anyways, doesn't matter. all three of those individuals, or four of those individuals, had said, hey, we need to get this road on the show, and so that's a show on the road. That's a reference to a movie, Road on the Show. But anyways, we need to get this show on the road. And that's essentially what they were saying. And so from there, and essentially it took Steve Thomas to light a fire under Governor Romer's behind, because Governor Romer was acting like, oh, I don't know what's going on. What can I do? According to when we were reading the Vanity Fair article, Governor Romer was like, I don't have any control over that. There's only so much that I can do. But according to Charles Brennan, you actually did do what we told you to do. And then looks, it's funny what a little fire can do. Funny what a little fire can do. Once you get a little pressure up under you, all of a sudden, you can call people to the table. That's all we were asking you to do. Call people to the table and hold someone accountable and tell Alex, take this thing to a trial. Take this thing, at least put this in front of the grand jury. Chief Beckner was kind of saying the same thing when they put pressure on DA Hunter. They said, hey, man, we presented you evidence. It looks like you don't want to take it. And we can't get the Ramseys to come in. Can we take this thing to a grand jury so that we can talk to somebody, right? So that we can talk to somebody about this and try to get some answers and sort of, make people witness that won't witness. And they did all that. And Chief Beckner did all that for Alex Hunter to take his silly behind in that grand jury process and not even call Patsy or John. I don't care if they take the fifth. I don't care. Call him in. Because there's all this talk about how, DA Hunter held John and Patsy in as the people who did this. How can I believe that? If that's the case, why he ain't call him in? Make it make sense. If he truly believed they did it, then why he ain't call him in? I don't care if they plead the fifth. We need it on record. Y'all do a lot of that, don't you? Don't call him in. Don't get it on record. Can't be talked about. Shut up and seal the record. So can't nobody talk about anything. So everybody has to work around stuff. You ain't beating the allegations, because people are out here saying a lot of stuff. A lot of crazy stuff. Stuff that's way out there. You ain't beating the allegations. You're not. Because at this point, you got people's mind wondering, what did you do? How can they be proved wrong because you don't say anything? You don't talk at all. You don't give anybody any reason not to believe that you had any. I know you like to, oh man, I would never do that to my daughter. Then come and talk to us. Come and work with us. But you don't want to do that. Grand jury worked for 13 months, disbanding last fall with an announcement that there would be no indictments. For all the complaints from near and far about Alex Hunter, the reluctant prosecutor, the fact is that 12 grand jurors plus 5 alternates considered the evidence in her testimony from dozens of witnesses and were no more prepared than the district attorney to point an accusing finger. That's a lie. We know that. But that's the information that people were led to believe. You see what I'm saying? People were led to believe there are no indictments. People were led to believe that the grand jury was not ready. They did. They gave an indictment. We don't have to show that. But anyways, and as somebody mentioned, it seemed like, somebody in power was protecting the Ramseys, was sort of the case. I really came to this article looking for, something on Susan Stein is what I was really looking for. But I didn't see anything with respect to Susan Stein, just the basic stuff with John Ramsey. He was the CEO of a $1 billion company. Funny thing is that, people ask if John was seemed like a grieving father or someone trying to cover his tracks. Didn't mention anything about, and I was also looking for if they said anything about the affair of John and Patsy, if they said anything about it, but he didn't say anything about it. So, Charlie is not that messy. But if you remember, this is the lady that Susan Stein, or this is the guy that Susan Stein emailed impersonating Chief Beckner. She emailed Charlie Brennan, she emailed him impersonating Beckner, essentially saying, hey, those 2 articles that you wrote, you got it right. So this is the guy. So I didn't find anything. I didn't find too much on Patsy Ramsey other than the bear thing. And, the 911 call and police arriving and stuff like that. Didn't really talk too much about Burke. That was another point. It didn't really talk too much about Burke or anything, other than just like brief stuff. Kay, he was in the house that morning. Simple stuff. Didn't really talk too much about Fleet White and Priscilla White, but mainly talking about Fleet White being in the house and I think essentially kind of tagging along when John essentially went to the window and said, hey, here's this broken window. Now let me dart off to the wine cellar and whatnot. Let me dart off to this wine cellar and figure things out. Didn't see any mention about the Fernies, because not much is said about the Fernies. Didn't see anything there. So I guess the last thing would be kind of because they talked about, unbecoming, because this crime was botched a little bit. But, Charlie made the point. He said, now, look, I know that we're saying that this thing is botched, but wait a second. You have to also consider the fact that we're talking about Christmas. People are not in the office on Christmas. And not only are you talking about Christmas, you're talking about the next day after Christmas in the morning time. You're talking about early in the morning, somebody is calling. Now, I was thinking about that. There is this show called Death by Fame on Discovery Plus. And one episode, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with it's a hip hop and R&B group called High Five. And there's this gentleman by the name of Russell Neal. And he had a wife. I think her name was Christina Martinez. And essentially what had happened was, things went left, things got abusive, and he ended up murdering Christina is what the evidence points toward. But he did it in front of the kids. But Neil, he turned himself in, but he did it like a day and a half later, so as to give himself time. And so they said this probably happened like 5 a.m. when she came in from her job. I think she was a dancer at a nightclub. This probably happened when she came in from her job, and he confronted her about something, knew she had another boyfriend and she was trying to leave the relationship. And, he just went crazy. He went off and, did it in front of the kids, and he waited to kind of get himself ready and get himself together. And I bring that up to say this. Sometimes there are some things about patterns, within certain circumstances and situations. When you are waiting for something, there's a possibility that when you are waiting for something, you are eager to get it over with. But you want to make it seem like it has to fit within a certain way. It has to fit within a certain storyline. Patsy and John called at 5:52 in the morning. Dang near the day after Christmas. super early in the morning. Said they didn't have any recollection of JonBenet or anything, hearing anything, seeing anything. They didn't know. Patsy said, all I did as I woke up, saw a note, told my husband, broke into my child's room, and I came and called you guys. That's what I did. It could be the case that something about the timing of the call in the morning in this circumstance seems too perfect. Like if you're waiting, like if you do something overnight, like dang man, I broke my arm or something like that, and the nearest emergency, I live in a small town, and the doctor doesn't come. Well, let's not say broke arm. Let's say something like my truck is stuck in a ditch and there are no tow trucks for miles, right? No tow trucks can come out and get me. Or you know what? An even better one. I'll do an even better one. My tire's on flat. All the tire places, it's late at night. All the tire places are closed. And this has actually happened to me before, or I almost got stuck like that. All the tire places are closed. So, it's late at night. You're just going to have to wait in the morning to call. So, I mean, that kind of leaves you a little bit anxious. So guess what you're going to do? In the morning time, you're going to wake up and you're going to call, as soon as possible. And that would fit within the timeline because you have to call and say, hey, I've been waiting all night to call, but I couldn't call till you opened up. But I want to be the first one to tell you my tire's flat. Can I bring my tire in, get it fixed, and then bring it back over here to put it on? I say that to say that because Patsy and John have to make this fit. They can't call early. If there's a legitimate problem that involves them, they cannot call right on the spot and say, we have an internal problem that's going to make you guys look at us. Right. Furthermore, things just seem fishy. Why was Mike Bynum there as an attorney? He's a corporate attorney. He's an attorney for Lockheed Martin and Access Graphics. He protects John in terms of Access Graphics. I don't know about you, but I don't call or talk to attorneys unless I need advice on legal related stuff. I don't. So I'm wondering why John was calling an attorney at his, like, not a personal attorney, an attorney that he probably had relationships with at the company. Because, Access Graphics was involved in some lawsuits in where they were going after people. I think they were going after debtors. And so obviously, you have to work a lot with your legal team to make sure and say, hey, these people owe us money. Can we legitimately go after them and force them to pay us our money? Because I was looking at a long time ago, man, probably several months ago. And I never presented this because it didn't mean anything at the time. But, it just showed, and I needed to log in through my I don't know if I downloaded it or not, but I needed to log in through my university's website or their library to access this stuff, to where it was kind of saying, hey, there's this lawsuit here from Access Graphics, and there's like a list of lawsuits. And essentially I was like, okay, are these lawsuits against Access Graphics, or are these, Access Graphics against someone else? And now a lot of them, I think the mass majority of them actually, or all of them, were against other individuals who had failed to pay them some sort of debt or something like that. And so obviously John would have some sort of relationship with the attorney in this point to talk about these things. And even though he's not a criminal defense attorney, he's not a criminal attorney, he would know attorneys in his field. And so therefore, you would have Mike Bynum stepping in and saying, hey, it's possibly an issue here, because it's possible that John called him and said, I might have an issue. What do I do? And you have all, and it could be the case that Mike said, okay, you wait to call in the morning. What's going on? Oh, we were planning to leave in the morning, and, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, I hear Patsy, I'm asleep, and all of a sudden Patsy screams, and I jump up, freaking, I run downstairs, and in the basement, my daughter's laying on the ground in the basement, and then Patsy's screaming and hollering. And so the first thing I do is I tell Patsy to shut up, and Burke's just standing there, tell Burke, go to your room, don't come out. And then the first thing I did was I called Mike, and so, Mike, I'm calling you. What do I do? Then Mike is like, okay, the first thing we need to do. And so obviously in the morning time, blah, 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 you wait to call me, you clear out your phone records, you wait to call me, and then you call me. And then I'm gonna come over, and then I'm going to advise you. I'm going to call from over here and say that it's possible that you might be in some trouble, or I'm hearing things. You ain't hearing that. I'm hearing things like you might be in trouble. They might be looking at you. And so I'll come over, and that will give me a reason to come over. I'll come over and I'll advise you on counsel, because you got to remember, the Ramseys got advised on counsel fast. Even before the BPD had an idea, but even before the BPD could even voice their concerns, John and Patsy had a lawyer. Even before the BPD could say, it's you, John and Patsy had a lawyer. Before Linda Arndt could even come back and ask Patsy some questions the next day, before they could even get out and say, we think it's you, the Ramseys had already had a legal team. That's what I'm saying. So when you pair that stuff with this idea that they waited, and they called as soon as they could early in the morning to make it seem like, hey, we legitimately woke up and found our daughter here. But you called as early as possible. There was no sleeping in, right? Because Patsy talked about getting up early in the morning, but Patsy wasn't getting up no 6 or 7 in the morning. Patsy was getting up at 7, according to what she said in the woman's magazine. Patsy was getting up at 7. You see what I'm saying? Not no 5:30, and then just walking, getting on her clothes and putting on her makeup. It only took Patsy 15 minutes to get dressed and put on makeup. I mean, dang, what kind of makeup you put on? You know what I mean? I know you ain't put on nothing crazy. You probably just got up and put on some lipstick and some mascara. Because I know, my God, I ain't no way. Because 15 minutes comes and goes. Look, if a lady tells you 15 minutes for makeup, it's probably going to be 30, 45. Because you can't help it. And if it's legitimately 15 minutes, it's probably only going to be the bare minimum, some lipstick and some mascara. It's going to be that. Because ain't no way you got dressed and put on makeup in 15 minutes and walk downstairs to get ready for some coffee and read the first part of a letter. Oh, no. Oh, no. What was the other 15 minutes? Because you found the letter at 5:45. And then you didn't call till 5:52, 7 minutes later. So from there, you bolted through the house and looked around Burke's room. And then you went up to John. John is running around in his underwear, according to what he said. And y'all both reading the letter. In 7 minutes, neither one of y'all really read the letter, is what I'm being led to believe. But y'all went downstairs, called the cops. But you called in the nick of time to solidify. Nobody woke up late, like Home Alone. Nobody woke up late. Nobody missed an alarm clock. Everybody was on point. I said I was going to be up at 5 o'clock, 5:30. To be honest, we don't even know if they were going to fly out at 5:30 in the morning. We don't know that. They could have legitimately been prepared to fly out at 8:30. Legitimately. But because I can't wait too long, I got to revise the story to say 5:30. This is possible. Now, I'm just sort of hypothesizing here. But it's possible that they told us that they were getting up at 5:30 anyway, when really they weren't getting up at 5:30. They were getting up at more like a comfortable time to get up. We're going to sleep until about 8:30 or about 7. We're going to get up because, John, you need to be well rested to fly the plane, because I'm not going to lie to you. When you fly in a plane, it takes a lot of mental energy out of you, especially the plane that John was flying, because I don't believe that John was flying an autopilot plane. The plane that John was flying, you need all of your mental faculties to fly that plane. You have to constantly be paying attention. You have to be on the radio. Now, it's fun, but you have to be locked in, because you have to hold the level, right? You have to hold the plane level. And now the plane is not going to drop altitude fast. You know what I mean? It's not going to be crazy, but it will start dropping altitude, and it's not like, oh, we go, even if you cut the plane off, you're not going to just go straight into the dirt. It's going to sort of coast down, but still, you know what I mean? You have to keep it level, even when you think you're keeping it level, you know what I mean? So that's a little bit of my concern, because it's like, I'm going to need all of my mental faculties to fly this plane. Pilots need all their mental faculties to fly a plane on autopilot. And all they're going to do is land on big airlines. John would have needed all of his energy to fly that plane. So I need all of my sleep. So to say that I'm going to go to sleep at 11 and get up tired, you know what I mean? And get up at 5 in the morning, you know what I mean? 10:30, somewhere about 11, probably closer to when he went to bed, somewhere thereabouts, and get up at 5:30. No, man, I'm probably going to sleep the full 8 hours, 8 hours, and go. See, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's 6 hours. Nah, that's pretty good. But I'm pretty sure John is going to, even if he wakes up at 5:30, I'm going to take my time. There is no need to rush. They're not going to rush out of the house. There's no need. We woke up at 5:30 to get ready to go. It's more likely that we're going to be out of the house. The goal is to be out of the house by 7:30, maybe 8. And that's what I'm saying. Y'all probably really didn't plan to leave the house or to get up till about 7. But something forced you to be up at 5:30. So you called as early as possible to make it seem like, yes, we planned to get up at this point, but we legitimately found our daughter at this point as well. So everybody is moving early. Everybody has to get up early, especially on Christmas, day after Christmas. And so the cops are coming day after Christmas and they're like, man, we don't really have any murders. What's going on? And so obviously they're a little bit out of it. Everybody's a little bit out of it, but you ain't, because it's possible that you've been up all night. Allegedly. Y'all done been up all night. Allegedly. Running around here looking for JonBenet Ramsey and trying to see what y'all can do, talking to Mike Bynum. Allegedly. And that's all I'm saying. I'm gonna leave it at that. Pretty good article. I think it's open. It's free. So if you want to read the full thing or just put it on a, like a voice to text kind of, or voice to speech kind of deal, Speechify or something like that. It's a pretty good read. Just very interesting. Not very technical or nothing like that. Just a pretty good read. But those are all the things that I pulled out of the case. I think you'd be interested in. Oh, you know what? I feel like the last thing would be Governor Owens. So essentially, to close this out, Governor Owens comes down and says, we need to make a move on this case. And he calls John and Patsy back to Boulder because they're in Atlanta, is what happens. Calls them back to Boulder because they didn't went to Atlanta. They didn't left Colorado completely. They didn't got out of Dodge completely. But kind of also something in this article that was that has me questioning, the hands in which the case was in terms of DA Hunter. Again, we talked about this before, but Brennan is giving a little bit of a different perspective. He mentioned, now Alex Hunter mentioned, or he was, trying to talk to newspapers about Commander Eller, who was on the case originally. Kind of mentioning, there's something that he's done. He doesn't need to be on this case. Now, anyways, DA Hunter is trying to claim that Eller had done something. And so Brennan says, I found myself caught in the middle of this dysfunctional family feud when it came to light that Detective Division Commander John Eller had applied for a job as chief of police in Cocoa Beach, Florida. In doing a story about this, I acquired a copy of his resume at the district attorney's office. Upon learning that I had the resume, requested that I forward them a copy. I saw no reason not to. It was public record, and I was only sparing them the inconvenience of an extra phone call. Several days later, I found myself on the phone with Hunter. The district attorney called my attention to an 8-month segment during which Eller had been on loan to the State Enforcement Consortium. If you look into his tenure there, Hunter said, and this is the crazy thing that I say about Alex Hunter, bro, you are a public official, and this is crazy. If you look into his tenure there, Hunter said, you may find that there's a harassment complaint or something to that effect. Okay. He was supposed to be there for a year, but it was cut short. And so Brennan is saying, I worked that tip hard. If true, it would have been a legitimate story given that degree to which this case was under the nation's microscope. It didn't pan out, however. Yes, Eller's tenure in that program had been cut short. Yes, a few people with knowledge of the situation said Eller's personality might have rubbed a few people the wrong way. He wasn't warm and fuzzy. But no, there was no record of any formal complaint against him for harassment or otherwise. There was no story to write. It was only when I worked on the book with Schiller that I learned the district attorney had run the same tidbit past at least one other reporter, Jeff Shapiro of the Globe tabloid. Shapiro wasn't able to do anything more with it than I had. This is the point in the story where most folks' ability to suspend disbelief, if they've maintained it to this point, finally expires. That an elected 7-term district attorney would not only grant meetings to a tabloid reporter, but actually tease the reporter with information that could compromise or undermine another high-ranking law enforcement officer in the midst of such a sensitive investigation is something many objective observers find virtually impossible to contemplate. But it happened, and Shapiro was far from the only tabloid scribe whom Hunter allowed into his office for discussions about the case. Moreover, he granted several meetings to a writer named Stephen Singular, a published author who was contemplating doing a book on the Ramsey affair. Singular, and I don't know if he's talking about affair or in terms of John Ramsey's affair, or if he's talking about this whole ordeal with JonBenet and whatnot, and just in terms of the case. I don't know that. Singular had been pressing Hunter on whether authorities were giving adequate consideration to the possibility of connection with the internet child picture rings. I guess I'll call it that. Again, I'm censoring myself for YouTube. If Hunter had given adequate, perspective to that. Singular said he left his meetings with Hunter feeling that he'd been tacitly deputized to probe the angle himself. Singular did, in fact, go on to write a book in which he developed his thesis, albeit in rather unconvincing fashion. Of course, Hunter wasn't the only one granting private audiences to tabloid reporters. Shapiro also developed a relationship with Steve Thomas of the Police Detective Division, who ultimately caught Shapiro on a hidden wire talking about his private conferences with Hunter. And so when Hunter should be working the case, and paying attention to that, he's over here talking to tabloid and news reporters, trying to get people fired from their job, trying to claim some sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Trying to claim some sort of inappropriate behavior. I wonder, because you are stepping on grounds a little bit of defamation. And when we talked about Lynn Wood, what happened with Lynn Wood and that defamation thing, Lynn Wood had to give up his license, quit practicing law. But after this case, this JonBenet case, Alex Hunter hung it up. And I wonder why. Because you are treading on defamation. Because good and dang well, you don't know nothing about that man doing inappropriate stuff with people. You know that. And you done came out here and tried to have two reporters. You are so thirsty to try to get this man off the case because you don't like him. You are so thirsty because you can't control him. You can't fire him. And so when you talk to his boss, you can't get his boss to fire him because you can't walk. And that's what makes it funny, because you can't walk into the police station and say, I don't like him, fire him, because Kobe won't do it. Chief Kobe won't do it. You can't walk in and say, Kobe, fire him, because Kobe's like, I need evidence, man. I can't just. And so Alex is like, okay, we'll find some. And that's what's scary, because that was not based on anything. And that's when we get to talking about power dynamics and stuff like that in politics. And that's what has me concerned, because here we are with these individuals just talking. Could it be the case in some cases when we dive into the attorney super team that John and Patsy hired? Had Morgan and Freeman have a good record. Had Morgan and Foreman have a good record. Considered super lawyers. Consistently for years on end, prior to John and well after John. And I told you they represented Kobe Bryant and Ghislaine Maxwell. So much that y'all can demand the big bucks. Is this the type of stuff y'all doing? I'm asking a question. Is this what y'all are doing? Just out of nowhere to impeach a witness. This stuff y'all doing? Now, this is what we know about Alex Hunter doing. Trying to call into question somebody's integrity with no evidence, no proof. And asking, on the off chance that it's true, asking two reporters to go dig. That was intentional. You intentionally told them to go because you knew that they were experienced reporters who would dig and scrap and scratch, because they had already done it, for any information that they can find on the case. And they will dig because they had already done it. They had already proven themselves, and you've been watching them. And so you said, go look into this and see what you can find. And neither reporter, as hungry and thirsty as they were for a story, couldn't find any real lead on it. Couldn't find it. Where did that come from? Where did that come from, bro? If I was Commander Eller, that would be dang near grounds for question and be like, hey, come on. Now I got to go after your legal license. Don't do that. And that's some of the weird stuff that, Charlie Brennan brought up, in this case. So like I said, go read it. It's a good read. Might be interested in some stuff. But that's the video. Like I say all the time. Appreciate your support. Appreciate your love. Appreciate you engaging in the comments. I am just swamped right now trying to pass over into candidacy, and it's a lot of paperwork. Got a call right before this from my advisor. It was like, hey, you need to turn this over. You need to submit this so you can go into candidacy, blah, 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 and you need to wait for this IRB approval from here, blah, blah, blah. So it's just like, it's just a lot right now. So I'm trying to remain consistent on this. It's like, I got my, I got my notebook of stuff, right? I got my notebook here. I got my notebook of stuff that I'm kind of like writing stuff down and whatnot. Let me see. I don't know if you could see that. Just writing stuff down. I just got this notebook too. So I got about several pages of stuff that, I'm interested in, trying to go through. So I got several pages of stuff that I want to touch on, ideas that I want to go through. There's this contradiction video of, really a lot of things contradictory that John said, but John and Patsy say and things that they've done that are contradictory. And I've come across several things, but I'd like more. I'd like to, come across more things to where that I can put that together and present that to you guys as well. So it's just a lot, but this stuff is fun. So I'm just trying to make sure that I get something out. And it's like I get to thinking about stuff and it's like, okay, I need to write it down, because if I don't write it down, then I forget it. And it's like, oh, that's a great thought. And if I don't write it down, I forget it. So thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for rocking it out. For all my new subs, I appreciate you for coming in. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for following me, because I know a lot of you have followed this case for a long time. And so thank you for kind of listening in to my perspective. And thank you for kind words and encouragement. A lot of you say, hey man, I've never heard this angle. I appreciate you for presenting it. So and as always, I appreciate you for watching. Shout out to the video sponsors and whatnot. Those who are giving monetarily. Like I said before, man, you don't have to do it, but you do. And I really, truly appreciate that. Can never take that for granted. Thank you for those who comment, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. And kind of getting my videos out there and stuff like that, helping other people to see. I appreciate that. Can never be downplayed or understated. So thank you so much. I have to go to class now, but I love you all. Appreciate you all. Keep fighting the good fight for justice for this young lady. And until next time, take it easy.